Welcome to Leaders' Questions.
Agus aran na rubítas in arig lígus ceart dúirt tú gro bole clias sewaite. Agus bhí an seo náian go bhéta dunne bí hiúil na sreide trí leir na ceithre a réileat narú an ceithre sewaite. Gur féidir le siúil fríd na príomhsreidena agus gan garda ceile Harabi. Agus inis dír a couple million na dhééis ó dúirta sin tíimid ggóil ceantratha ggóil an ara úr ag réid ggóil ceantratha bhála líon náhfuil sehaite. Ní rinne sé dún cé na héitina náhfuil sehaite agus cadéta se gáil dhéanamh faduda a bhhailm de thuirmaí ar seo. Minister, everyone has a right to feel safe. Everyone has a right to walk the street of their own city or town without feeling the need to look over their shoulders. But the sad reality is that this sense of safety has been robbed from so many. There's a particular problem here in our capital city of Dublin, and the root of that problem is the failure of successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments to recruit the number of Gardaí that are needed. The collapse in public sense of safety here in Dublin and in many other places too is very real. It is because we simply do not have enough Gardaí on the ground, on the beat, visible policing in our streets, in our communities and keeping people safe. And that's the reality no matter how much the government try to wish to stick their head in the sand. Now, Minister, when you were Minister for Justice, you told us all that Dublin was safe. This was despite that anybody who regularly walks through the city centre could tell you that the city was not safe. That you can walk through many of the main parts of the city without ever seeing a Garda. And that's not the fault of frontline Gardaí, by the way. They go out of their way every single morning, every single evening to do incredible work to keep our community safe. The fault lies with government and successive Minister for Justice who have failed time and time again to give Gardaí Síochána the manpower and the resources to turn the tide and get the job done. Now, despite your declaration that the city was safe, and you did that surrounded by about a dozen Gardaí as you walked through O'Connell Street, your successor as Minister for Justice has told us that parts of Dublin indeed are not safe. He just hasn't told us which parts aren't safe, and neither has he told us what he's going to do about it. Now, over the last number of weeks, we've had a number of very serious criminal incidents in the city. The most serious of those were the stabbings in Stoney Batter and the fatal stabbing in South Ann Street. These horrific attacks and their devastating consequences have only added to people's fears and to the sense of danger. In the absence of serious government action, the situation has gone from bad to worse, Minister. Minister, is it not clear that knife crime and the carrying of knives is a real threat to people's safeties? Because until 2 days ago, there was no indication that there were any gaps in terms of powers needed by the Gardaí to police knife crime. Not from yourself, not from the current Taoiseach, and indeed not from Minister O'Callaghan. Certainly not when Mary Lou McDonald raised the issue with the Taoiseach here on Tuesday. Yet the Minister for Justice now has indicated that new laws would be introduced to give Gardaí greater powers to stop and search people who they suspect of carrying knives. So my question to you, Minister, is straightforward, and as a former Minister for Justice who made that declaration that Dublin City was safe, do you now agree with the current Minister for Justice when he says that parts of Dublin are not safe? Does the Minister agree with the current Minister for Justice that current laws are not adequate to deal with the issues of knife crime and people carrying knives? And if that's the case, why didn't you do anything about it? And is it not the case that we simply do not have enough Gardaí on the beat to police existing laws?
Thank you, Concordia, and thank you, Deputy, for raising this matter. If I could at the outset just offer my sincere condolences to the young man who was brutally stabbed at the weekend, and to make it clear, and the Gardaí have made it very clear in their actions to date, that whoever is responsible for this will be held accountable and will be brought to justice, and to acknowledge obviously the serious incident that occurred last weekend as well. It is absolutely this government's intention, priority, and has always been the case that people feel safe and that they are safe in their homes and on their streets. And it's for that very reason, as a former Minister for Justice, I increased the budget for our Gardaí by €500 million. It's for that very reason that my number one priority, and the number one priority for this government and the current minister, is to make sure that the number of Gardaí that we have on our streets, in our towns, in our cities, that continues to increase. And that number is steadily rising. And in fact, for our capital city, over 50% of our new recruits have consistently gone to Dublin city centre and the surrounding areas. That's why, as Minister for Justice, I introduced body cameras for the first time in our city centre to make sure that Gardaí are equipped to respond to the many challenges that we face, not just in Dublin but across the country. That's why our current Minister is committed to making sure that they have other technologies and equipment available to them, like facial recognition technology, so that they can respond to incidents. When it comes to knife crime, this is an issue that I and that every person in this government and beyond takes extremely seriously. That's why, when Minister, I increased the penalty for those who are found not just carrying a knife, in possession of a knife, those who threaten to use a knife, and of course those who use a knife, reflecting the severity of this crime. The number of confiscations that Gardaí have, the number of seizures have increased significantly in recent years, and the Police Powers Bill that you referenced, which I instigated in the department and which has been followed through, will make sure that Gardaí have even greater powers available to them to respond to these crimes. Of course there are challenges in our capital city. Of course there are challenges, and I have never shied away from that. But I think we all recognise that it's not just the role of our Gardaí to make sure that people are safe. And that's why two things have to progress. The community safety partnerships, which look at community safety from a whole of community perspective, making sure that our Gardaí, working with our local authorities, working with our community groups, working with our young people, our educators, our housing sector, and so much beyond that, that they come together and deliver a plan for their areas. And that includes Dublin City Centre, that includes our capital. That is why our task force, which was led by our Taoiseach and our current Taoiseach, former Taoiseach, set out very clearly that there were a number of things that we need to do now. Yes, continue to increase the number of Gardaí in our city centre, and that is happening. That we need to look at issues like dereliction, that we need to look at street lighting, that we need to look at the concentration of services in our city centre. We need to look at who is accommodated and how that is developed in our city centre. That we need to work collectively to respond to the challenges that are there, and I am absolutely committed, as is this government, to making sure that we all play our part in responding to the challenges that are there. But let me assure you, Deputy, when it comes to safety, when it comes to ensuring that people are safe, that they feel safe in their cities, in their homes, on our streets, it is a #1 priority for this government. And you'll note and you'll see in all of the actions that have been outlined in the programme for government, which was agreed by all parties on this side of the House, that more measures will be taken, not just to introduce tougher laws, as has been the case to date, but to ensure that recruitment continues to increase, whether it's increasing the training allowance available to our Gardaí to encourage more, whether it's making sure that we have greater availability for Gardaí to train, not just in Templemore, whether it's making sure that we look to expand our force and making sure it is as diverse as possible so that it reflects the communities that Gardaí are supporting, making sure that we do everything possible to support the Gardaí in their work. And finally, just to acknowledge the substantial work that our Gardaí do, that they do day in, day out in making sure that they keep the people of this country safe.
Minister, have you a problem answering the question? Let's try again. I asked 3 questions. You stated as Minister for Justice that Dublin City was safe. You were surrounded by Gardaí as you did your walkabout through the city centre. The Minister for Justice has told us that parts of Dublin City are not safe. He hasn't told us where, he hasn't told us what he's going to do about it. I'm asking you, as the former Minister of Justice, do you agree with him? That's the first question. Please answer it. Second question is, he now tells us that we need more laws in terms of knife crime. Do you agree with that? And why didn't you do anything about this when you were Minister for Justice? When did the penny drop in relation to this issue, that we have a serious problem in relation to knife crime in terms of this city and elsewhere? And the third question is, do you not accept that we simply do not have enough Gardaí, and over your tenure as Minister for Justice, you didn't reach the targets that were set year after year? So 3 simple questions. Let's do it for the second time. Do you agree with the Minister for Justice that parts of Dublin are not safe? Do you agree that we need new legislation in terms of knife crime, and why didn't you do anything about it during your terms of government? And is it not the root of the problems that we don't have enough Gardaí on the streets?
Thank you, Ken Corley. Maybe for a second time for the people in the back who didn't actually hear my response to all of your 3 questions. And maybe you might repeat what I've actually said over the last number of years. There are absolutely problems in our city centre. There are problems in every part of our country that we need to address. And by addressing those, we can ensure that every person is safe and feels safe in our towns, in our homes, in our villages. I've always said there are challenges, and we are doing, and all of the things I've outlined that I have done and that our new Minister and current Minister for Justice will do with the support of this government will try to achieve those overall objectives. Secondly, I introduced new laws specifically recognising the fact that there is a significant problem when a young person decides to carry a knife, when a young person thinks that it's appropriate, or any person thinks that it's appropriate to carry a knife. And that's why increasing sentencing was a priority for the previous government. And that's why making sure Gardaí have as much power as they possibly can to ascertain those knives is an absolute priority.
Thank you,
and on the final one, we are making
up.
progress. We are seeing more Gardaí. I've
you.
said I need to go beyond, and we all need to go beyond 15,000 Gardaí.
We
In fact,
move now.
we have a higher
Thank you.
target than we had set initially.
Deputy Owen Kenny of the Labour Party.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.